Hello students, in today's lecture, we will discuss chapter 18, Neural Control and Coordination NCERT practice question. This is disclaimer. So this will be our learning objectives for today. We will learn how the nervous system controls and coordinates body activities by working through the NCERT practice questions. So this is index. So in today's lecture, we will discuss NCERT practice questions. We have total 25 questions and we will try to solve as much as we can in 1 hour. So this is question number 1 and the question is of assertion reason type. And here assertion is the myelin sheath is interrupted at regular intervals by nodes of Ranvier, and the reason which is given, these nodes help in saltatory conduction of nerve impulses. We have to opt the correct one. So let's see the answer. So here option number A, that is both A and R are true and R is the correct explanation of A. We know that myelin sheath is interrupted at regular intervals by nodes of Ranvier which allow for saltatory conduction of nerve impulses, enabling faster signal transmission. So you can see in this picture. So let's see first what was assertion. The myelin sheath is interrupted at regular intervals by nodes of Ranvier. We know that myelin sheath which insulates nerve fibers has gaps called as nodes of Ranvier at regular intervals. And these nodes, what they do? They allow nerve impulses to jump quickly between them, a process which is called as saltatory conduction. It makes signal transmission faster and more efficient. Hence, the assertion is true and the reason correctly explain why the myelin sheath is interrupted. So the gaps in this myelin sheath are called as nodes of Ranvier and it promotes saltatory conduction. Then these gaps occur at regular intervals along the axon. And these nodes, what they do? They allow for faster signal transmission through a process that we have already discussed, saltatory conduction. And here, the electrical impulse jumps from one node to the next, making the signal travel more quickly than if it is traveled continuously along the entire axon. So let's see the reason. And the reason given was, these nodes help in saltatory conduction of nerve impulses. So we have just discussed it. We know that myelin sheath is a fatty layer around nerve fibers which has small gaps that are called as nodes of Ranvier that are present at regular intervals. And these nodes, what they do, they allow electrical signals, or we can say nerve impulses, to jump quickly from one node to the next, a process called as saltatory conduction. It makes the transmission faster and more efficient. So this process significantly increases the speed of nerve impulse transmission. Let's see the relationship between assertion and reason. So the presence of nodes of Ranvier that tells us about assertion directly enables saltatory conduction. That is the reason. So without these gaps in the myelin sheath, what will happen? The signal would travel slowly along the whole length, making communication inefficient. So saltatory conduction would not be possible. Nerve impulses will slow down without myelination as the signal must travel through the entire neuron, making communication slower compared to myelinated nerves. So the regular spacing of nodes of Ranvier is important because it allows faster nerve signal transmission, which is called as saltatory conduction. Here we have already discussed that the electrical impulses jump from one node to the next, making the signal travel more quickly and efficiently along the nerve fiber. Let's see some key benefits of this arrangement. So it leads to faster conduction of nerve impulses. It shows more energy efficient transmission. It shows better preservation of signal strength. So we will continue the answer. Okay, and this is question number 2. And the question is, which of the following statements about the cerebellum is incorrect? So we have given 4 options. Option A, it maintains posture and equilibrium. B, is responsible for memory and intelligence. See, it coordinates voluntary movements and it's located behind the cerebrum. We have to opt the incorrect one here. So here option number B is incorrect, and according to the question it is correct, which is it's responsible for memory and intelligence, which is wrong. Let's see why. So cerebellum, we know that it is mainly responsible for coordinating body movements, balance and posture, but it does not handle memory or intelligence, which are functions of cerebrum, not cerebellum. So therefore statement that cerebellum is responsible for memory and intelligence is incorrect. So in this picture, you can see forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain and its subparts. Let's see functions of cerebellum. Motor conduction. So, it coordinates voluntary movements. Okay. It highlights the role in enabling purposeful actions through neural signaling and muscle activations. Okay. So, helps maintain smooth, precise movements. So, it explains that the structure supports smooth and accurate body movements, which are very important for efficient biological functions. So the nervous system controls timing and force of movements by sending signals from the brain to muscles, ensuring precise and coordinated actions. Balance and posture. So we know that cerebellum controls balance and posture. Let's see the answer in detail. So it controls balance and posture by maintaining equilibrium. So here the incorrect statement would likely misrepresent its role in these functions. It helps control body posture. It processes information from vestibular system. And talking about motor learning, it is how the brain improves movement skills through practice using feedback and repetition, enabling smooth, efficient actions like walking or writing. So it helps learn new motor skills. It focuses on facilitating learning through movement and physical engagement, likely by providing structured opportunities for practice, repetition and feedback. So this approach helps individuals develop coordination, balance and control through hands-on experience. Refining movement patterns. It refers to the process by which organisms develop and improve their ways of moving, such as walking, swimming, or flying through practice, learning, and adaptation, which is very important for survival and efficient interaction with the environment. Stores learned movement patterns. It shows how the brain retains and recalls previously learned motor skills such as riding a bicycle or typing, allowing us to perform these actions smoothly and efficiently without conscious effort. So the solution will continue. Spatial awareness. It is the ability to understand and mentally represent the position and movement of the objects in space, which is important for tasks like navigating environments, understanding how organisms interact with their surroundings, and even in processes like cell movement or animal behavior. So it helps in understanding body position. So it likely supports spatial awareness or posture recognition. It serves as a tool for enhancing self-awareness of physical orientation, which can be beneficial in various tasks such as movement, balance, or coordination. Contributes to spatial orientation. So it refers to function that helps in body that helps an organism understand and navigates its environment in space. So this is often related to the role of inner ear, especially the vestibular system, which works with the eyes and brain to help maintain balance and spatial awareness. So this system is important for activities like walking, reading and driving, as it allows the body to sense movement and position in space, thereby contributing to spatial orientation. Let's see the location. So it is located at the back of the brain and is responsible for coordinating voluntary movements, maintaining balance, and ensuring smooth, precise muscle actions. We have also discussed that it plays a key role in motor control and helps in learning new motor skills, all of which are very important for our daily activities. It sits behind the cerebrum. So it sits at the back of the brain, just above the brainstem, and we have already discussed that it play a crucial role in coordinating movement, balance and posture, and it also helps in fine tuning motor activities to ensure smooth and precise actions. Structure: it is located underneath the occipital lobe is the cerebellum, which is a part of the brain that we have also discussed that it play a key role in coordinating movement. So it is located underneath the occipital lobe. Memory and intelligence are primary functions of other regions of brain. So these are primary memory and intelligence are primary functions of brain. That means other regions of brain. That means that while the brain as a whole is involved in thinking and remembering, specific areas like hippocampus, prefrontal cortex, and cerebellum play a key role in these processes. So the hippocampus is crucial for forming new memories, and the for instance, prefrontal cortex is involved in decision making and problem solving, and cerebellum helps in coordinating complex thoughts and actions. So these regions work together with the brain's overall structure to support memory and intelligence. So memory, it primarily involves hippocampus and temporal lobe. Hippocampus, we have already discussed, it play a key role in converting short-term memories into long-term ones, while the temporal lobe, especially the area called the medial temporal lobe, is involved in storing and retrieving memories, particularly those which are related to facts and events. So these brain regions work together to ensure we can remember things like facts, experiences, and learned information. Intelligence is mainly associated with the cerebral cortex, which is the outer layer of the brain responsible for higher functions like thinking, reasoning, problem solving, and decision making. So this part of the brain is highly developed in humans compared to other animals, allow us to learn, adapt, and use tools efficiently. So this is question number 3. And the question is again assertion and reason type. So we have given one assertion, which is gray matter contains mainly nerve cell and unmyelinated nerve fibers. And the reason they have given is white matter appears white due to the presence of myelin sheath around the nerve fibers. So we have given 4 options and we have to opt the correct one. So here option number B, which is both assertion and reason are true, but R is not the correct explanation of A. So let's see the answer. So assertion statement is true because you can see in this picture structure of, or we can say location of gray and white matter in brain. We know that gray matter in the brain is mainly made up of cell bodies of neurons, which are called as soma. These cell bodies are the main parts of neuron where the cell's nucleus and other important structures are located, and they play a key role in processing information within the brain. So neuron, we know that it has dendrites, which are branch-like structures that receive signals from the other neurons, and unmyelinated axons, which are the long cylinder projections that transmit electrical impulses away from the cell body, but without the protective myelin sheath that speeds up signal transmission in other neurons. So gray matter lacks the heavy myelination found in white matter, which means it has fewer insulating layers around its nerve fibers compared to the white matter. So this results in slower signal transmission in gray matter, as myelination helps speed up electrical impulses along neurons. So this distinction is important for understanding the structural and functional differences between the two types of brain tissue, with gray matter mainly involved in processing information, while white matter in transmitting signals between different parts of the brain. So it appears gray. Why? It appears gray due to higher concentration of cell bodies and less myelin. So it has high number of cell bodies, or we can say neurons, and relatively less myelin, which is the fatty insulation around the nerve fibers. Okay. So gray matter of the brain or spinal cord, where most of the neuron processing occurs, It contains the cell bodies, dendrites, and unmyelinated axons, giving it a grayish appearance compared to the white matter, which is rich in myelinated axons and appears white. So this distinction is important for understanding the structure and function of the CNS, or we can say central nervous system. So let's see why reason is true. White matter in the brain consists of myelinated axons, which are the nerve fibers covered with fatty substance called as myelin. So this myelin sheath helps in the faster transmission of electrical signals along the axons, allow a quick communication between different parts of the brain and the body. So this explains how white matter facilitates rapid neural signaling, which is very important for coordination and response in the nervous system. So, you know that myelin, what is myelin? It is a white fatty substance that forms an insulating sheath around axons, which are the long parts of the nerve cells. So, this sheath helps speed up the transmission of electrical signals along the nerve by acting like an insulator, preventing the signal from leaking out and allowing it to travel more quickly and efficiently. So, this is important for faster communication within the nerve system, and the process of myelination is, we know that it is very important. Now, the high concentration of myelin in white matter makes it appear white because myelin is a fatty substance. We have already discussed that insulates nerve fibers, which allow faster signal transmission. So, this insulation is very important for efficient communication between different parts of the brain and the body. So, myelin is a protective covering around nerve fibers made up of lipids and proteins, which helps in fast and efficient transmission of electrical signals in the nervous system. So why R is not the correct explanation of A? Let's see. So these are two independent facts about different parts of the nervous system. The presence of myelin in white matter doesn't explain why gray matter contains cell bodies and unmyelinated fibers, because white matter, we know, it is mainly composed of myelinated axons that transmit signals quickly between different parts of the brain and spinal cord, while gray matter contains the cell bodies of neurons, dendrites, and unmyelinated fibers, which are involved in processing and integrating information. Myelin, which insulates axons, is absent in gray matter because these areas do not require fast signal transmission but rather complex processing, which is why gray matter is rich in cell bodies and unmyelinated connections. So, they are essential for understanding the structure and function of different parts of the body. So, they are describing different anatomical features and their characteristics. Okay. So, these features help in identifying and classifying organisms, or we can say different parts, and understanding how these structures support their specific ways of life. So the statement are related but not the cause of the other. So this is question number 4. It is again assertion and reason type, and the assertion given is the blood-brain barrier prevents certain substances from entering the brain. Let's see the reason, and the reason given is the blood-brain barrier is formed by the tight junctions between capillary endothelial cells. So we have given 4 options. We have to opt the correct one. So here option number A is correct. That is, both A and R are true, and R is the correct explanation of A. Let's see why. So you can see in this picture, blood-brain barrier, how it is looked inside, or we can say under the microscope, and assertion is true. Why? Let's see. Because in the given option, in the correct option, we have given that both A and R are true, and R is the correct explanation of A. But why our assertion is true? Let's see. So we have learned also in the theory that Blood-brain barrier is a special layer that acts as a gatekeeper between the blood in our body and the brain, protecting it from harmful substances. So it is made up of tightly packed cells that allow only certain small molecules and nutrients to pass through while blocking harmful chemicals and pathogens. So this barrier ensures that the brain's environment remains stable and safe, which is very important for proper brain function. So blood-brain barrier, or we can say BBB, acts as protective shield, stopping harmful substances from entering the brain and damaging its delicate tissue. So it ensures that only safe and necessary substances can pass through, keeping the brain safe from any kind of toxins and infections. So let's see why reason is true. So we have already learned that BBB, or we can say blood-brain barrier, is mainly made up of special cells which are called as endothelial cells that line the tiny blood vessels in the brain, helping to protect the brain by controlling what substances can enter from the blood. So these cells are connected by the tight junctions, which are special protein structures that form from a very tight seal between neighboring cells, preventing substances from passing between them and helping to maintain the integrity and function of tissues like epithelium in the intestine, or we can say skin. So this is question number 5, and the question is identify the correct sequence of events in synaptic transmission. So we have given 4 points, or we can say 4 occurrence, and we have to arrange them in the correct sequence. So we have given 4 options. Let's see the correct one. So here option number A is correct. That is, first will be generation of action potential, then it will lead to calcium influx, then it will lead to release of neurotransmitter, and then what will happen? It will lead to binding to the receptor. So let's discuss the answer in detail. So in this picture you can see the whole mechanism of chemical synapse. Let's discuss the whole event. First, generation of action potential. What happens in here? So when an action potential reaches the end of the presynaptic neurons axon, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters from the synaptic vesicles into the synaptic cleft, which allows signal transmission to the next neuron or target cell. So when an electrical signal called as action potential travels along its neuron's axon, it eventually reaches the axon terminal, and this is the end part of the axon where the neuron connects to the another cell, either a neural cell, a nerve cell, or a muscle cell. So at the axon terminal, the signal triggers the release of chemical messengers called as neurotransmitters, which crosses the small gap between neurons, and those small gaps are called as synapse, to pass the signal to the next cell. And this whole process is very important for communication within the nervous system. So first the process begins. First we have generation of action potential. So this process begins when an action potential travels along the presynaptic neurons axon. Then what happens? This electrical signal reaches the axon terminal. Let's see furthermore what happens. Then second we have given is calcium influx, which is option number point 4. So let's see why it happened. In synaptic transmission, when an action potential reaches the axon terminal, it causes voltage gated calcium channels to open, which allow calcium ions to flow in. So this calcium influx triggers the release of neurotransmitters from synaptic vesicles into the synaptic cleft, and the neurotransmitters then bind to the receptors on the postsynaptic neuron, which lead to generation of new action potential, and finally the signal is passed on through the binding process. So this allows calcium ions to flow into the presynaptic terminal. So it further leads, or we can say triggers, the release of neurotransmitter into the synaptic cleft. So the increase in the calcium concentration inside the cell is very important because it triggers the next step in the process, such as muscle contraction of nerve signal transmission by activating specific proteins that require calcium to function properly. So next, the increase in the calcium concentration is crucial for the next step. Then we have third point, which is the release of neurotransmitter, which we have already discussed. So when a nerve impulse reaches the end of the neuron, it causes an influx of calcium ions into the presynaptic cell, and this calcium triggers the synaptic vesicles, which contain neurotransmitters, to fuse with the presynaptic membrane, and this fusion allows the neurotransmitters to be released into the synaptic cleft, where they can bind to the receptors on the postsynaptic neuron, which continue the signal transmission. So this fusion causes the release of neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft through exocytosis. Okay, so this allows neurotransmitter, in short, to be released into the synaptic cleft, which is the small space between the neurons, where they can bind to receptors on the next neuron, helping to pass the signal all along. Then we have fourth, that is binding to the receptors. Let's see what happens here. So when a nerve impulse reaches the end of a neuron, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters from the neuron's axon terminal, and these neurotransmitters then diffuse across the synaptic cleft, which is the small gap between the sending neuron and the receiving neuron, and this diffusion allows the neurotransmitters to reach the next neuron or target cell, where they can bind to receptors and transmit the signal further, enabling communication in the nervous system. So neurotransmitters then bind to the specific receptors on the postsynaptic membrane, which allows them to trigger a response in the next neuron by either exciting or inhibiting it. So when a neurotransmitter binds to the receptor on the postsynaptic neuron, it triggers various responses such as generating electrical impulses or releasing chemical messengers, which helps in transmitting the nerve impulse across the synapses. So we have we have question number 6 next, and the question is match the following. So we have given column A and column B, and we have to correctly match them. So let's see the correct answer. So option number A is correct, that is A will match with 2, B will match with 1, C will match with 4, and D will match with 3. Let's see why. So you can see in this picture different regions of brain: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, and special, or we can say it's subparts and spinal cord. Let's talk about corpus callosum. So we know that it is a broad nerve bundle connecting the brain's left and right hemispheres, enabling communication between them for coordinated functions. So it allows them typically to communicate and work together, which is important for coordinating complex tasks and integrating information from both sides of the brain. Function: it connects cerebral hemispheres. We know that it is a thick bundle that connects the left and right cerebral hemisphere, which allow them to connect and work together, which is very important for coordinating complex functions like problem solving, or we can say decision making. So it connects, first function is it connects cerebral hemispheres. Then let's talk about medulla oblongata. It is located at the, or we can say in the brain stem, and it is a vital part of the CNS, which is responsible for controlling essential life sustaining functions such as breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. So it acts as a relay center between the brain and the rest of the body, which ensure automatic regulation of these critical processes without conscious effort. So it controls vital autonomic functions. It controls, we can say, our daily practices that we even don't know that we are doing, like breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure, which ensures that essential life processes continue automatically without our conscious effort. Let's talk about function. We have already discussed that it controls heart rate, or we can say breathing and blood pressure, and ensures that our daily bodily processes continue automatically without any kind of conscious effort. Let's talk about thalamus. So thalamus, it is located in the forebrain, helping to process and transmit information to the appropriate areas of the brain. It acts as a relay station for sensory and motor signals, meaning it helps pass information from the senses to the brain's processing areas and send signals back to the body. Its main function is to serve a sensory relay station, coordinating communication between different parts of the brain and the body. Let's talk about pons. What is pons? These are the main part of the brainstem that helps connect different parts of the brain and plays a crucial role in regulating basic life functions like breathing and sleep. So, it is mainly involved in sleep and arousal. So, it helps control sleep and wakefulness by passing signals between different parts of the brain. Talking about its function, it helps regulate the transitions between wakefulness and sleep by controlling signals between the body and the brain. So it acts as a sleep center. So this is question number 7, and the question is, we have to match the column A correctly with column B, column second, and we have given 4 options. Let's see the correct answer and discuss the answer in detail. So here option number A is correct. That is A will match with 3, B will match with 1, C will match with 4, and D will match with 2. Let's talk about A, which is sensory neurons. So these neurons detect stimuli from the environment by receiving signals from the sensory receptors such as those in the eyes, ears, skin or nose, and then sending this information through electrical impulses to the brain for processing response. So they carry information from sensory receptors to the CNS by transmitting electrical and chemical signals which allow the body to respond to external and internal stimuli. So examples include neurons that detect touch, pain and temperature. So these are the we can say common examples of sensory neurons, which are specialized cells that receive signals from the environment and send them to the brain via spinal cord. So which in short help us perceive and respond to external stimuli. Talking about motor neuron, they carry signals from the CNS to the muscles, enabling movement by triggering muscle contraction, and they play a key role in converting neural impulses into physical actions, which is very important for all kind of voluntary movements. So we have discussed that sensory neurons detect stimuli from the environment like touch, pain or temperature and send this information to the CNS. And motor neurons, talking about them, they carry signals from the CNS to muscles or glands telling them to respond. So association neurons, also called as interneurons, they process information within the CNS by connecting sensory and motor neuron, which help the body react appropriately. So the nervous system controls movement and muscle contractions by sending electrical signals through neurons to the muscles, telling them to contract and relax, which allows the body to move and perform various kind of actions. So association neurons, these neurons, what are they? So we have given C option, which is association neurons. So these neurons process information by receiving, integrating and transmitting signals through electrical and chemical, which means it allows the nervous system to respond to stimuli and control bodily functions. So neurons integrate and analyze input from other neurons by receiving signals through their dendrites, processing these signals in the cell body and then sending the final output through the axon to other neurons or muscles, which allow the brain and nervous system to respond appropriately to stimuli. So it helps in decision making and complex processing. So they are the part of the CNS and work alongside sensory and motor neurons to enable the body to respond appropriately to stimuli. Let's talk about D, which is interneurons. So they are found within CNS and help in processing and transmitting signals between sensory and motor neurons, which enable the brain and spinal cord to coordinate responses to stimuli. They connect, or we can say link, different neurons within the brain and the spinal cord. So this indicates the fundamental role these connections play in facilitating communication and information processing within central and peripheral nervous systems. It acts as a relay station between the other neurons. This means these cells, which are known as interneurons, receive signals from sensory neurons and send them to the motor neurons, which help them to process and transmit information within the nervous system, which enable responses to the by enabling responses to the stimuli. So that's why A is matched with 3, that is sensory neurons detect stimuli. B, that is motor neuron, in which is matched with 1, that is it connects CNS to the muscles. C, that is association neurons, is matched with 4, that is it processes information. And the interneurons, it is matched with 2nd, that is it carries signals within the CNS. So this is question number 8, and the question is also match the following, and we have given 2 columns. So we have to correctly match column 1 with column 2. And we have given 4 options and we have to opt the correct one. So let's discuss the answer. So here option number A is correct. Let's see why. So you can see the structure of neuron. You can see cell body, dendrites, nucleus, axon, nodes of Ranvier, Schwann cells, axon terminal. These are key components of neuron. So dendrites in this picture also you can see it receives signals. It has fiber-like structure. So they are branch-like structures that extend from the neuron cell body, acting like tiny antennas that receive signals from other neurons, helping the neuron to gather and pass on information efficiently within the nervous system. So they receive signals from other neurons through chemical messengers, helping the neuron gather information and pass it along. So these signals, which are then converted into electrical impulses, allow the neuron to communicate within the nervous system. So having multiple dendrites increases the surface area of the neuron, which allow it to receive more signals at once, which help the neuron process and transmit information more efficiently. Okay, so this is important for communication within nervous system. Let's see B, which is soma, is matched with 1, which is cell body. So soma or cell body of a neuron is a part that contains the nucleus and other organelles necessary for cell survival and function. It is responsible for maintaining neuron structure and managing its metabolic activities, and it also plays a key role in receiving signals from other neurons through dendrites. And the soma is essential for neuron to function properly and communicate within the nervous system. So it contains nucleus and other organelles. It processes nutrients and produces protein. So as we have discussed, it is the main part that contains the nucleus and other organelles, and it is also responsible for processing nutrients and producing proteins which are needed for the neuron's function. It is also responsible for maintaining the neuron's basic cellular functions such as processing nutrients and producing proteins. So C, axon, was matched with 2nd, which is conduct impulses away. Let's see how. So long cable-like extension of a neuron is called as axon, which helps the neuron send messages to other cells. So this axon is covered by a fatty layer called the myelin sheath, which speeds up the transmission of signals. So at the end of the axon, we can see in the picture also, there are small branches which are called as axon terminal that releases chemicals to communicate with other neurons or muscle cells. So it conducts electrical impulses away from the cell body. So a neuron, we know that carries signals to other neurons or target cells through its axon, which is a long projection that transmits electrical and chemical messages away from the cell body. So this whole process allows communication within the nervous system, enabling the brain to send instructions to muscles, glands, and other parts of the body. So it can be very long, up to several feet in some cases. So we know that axon is long cable-like extension, and it is important for for conduction of electrical impulses away from the cell body, and it allows the neuron to send signals to the other neurons or target cells. So it can be very long, or sometimes it will be up to several feet, and its main function, we know that is to transport messages quickly across the nervous system. Let's see D. So myelin sheath D is matched with 4, that is insulation. So we know that the fatty layer that wraps around the axon, which is known as myelin sheath, acts as an insulator which helps electrical impulses travel faster along the nerve fiber. Now this layer is formed by the glial cells, oligodendrocytes in the CNS, and Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system, and it prevents the leakage of the nerve signal, making communication between neurons more efficient. So it acts as a electrical insulation, means it refers to the function of myelin sheath around nerve fibers, which insulates the axon and prevents the leakage of electrical signals, and it ensures faster and more efficient transmission of nerve impulses. It increases the speed of signal transmission. It helps prevent signal loss. So this is very important. We have this cover of insulation around the neuron, and this is important because it also we know that we have discussed that it insulates the nerve and ensures that electrical signals travel efficiently without any kind of degradation, and thus it prevents signal loss and ensure clear communication between different parts of the body. So it has huge role. So we know that myelin is produced by specialized cells which are called as Schwann cells in the PNS or peripheral nervous system, and oligodendrocytes in the CNS. These cells wrap around axons, forming a fatty insulation as a myelin sheath, which speeds up the transmission of nerve impulses by allowing electrical signals to jump between gaps called as nodes of Ranvier. And this whole process we have also discussed in the previous questions. This whole process is called as saltatory conduction, which makes communication within the nervous system more efficient. So this is question number 9, and the question is, which of these is not a function of cerebrospinal fluid? So we have given 4 options and we have 2 of the correct one. Let's see the answer. Option number B, that is hormone production. So hormone production is not a function of cerebrospinal fluid. Let's see why. Let's talk about first cerebrospinal fluid. It is a clear fluid that surrounds the brain and spinal cord, and its main job is to protect the CNS by acting as a cushion, providing nutrients and removing waste. However, unlike some other fluids in the body, CSF does not produce, or we can say releases, hormones, and its primary functions are more about support and protection rather than any kind of hormonal regulation. It does not have the hormone production as one of its primary functions. Let's see its actual function. It provides, as I told you, it provides mechanical support. So mechanical protection mainly provided by the meninges, which acts as a shock absorber for the brain and spinal cord, shielding them from any kind of physical injuries by cushioning and enclosing these delicate organs, thus preventing damage from bumps or impacts. So it acts as a shock absorber for the brain and spinal cord. So it provides buoyancy to the brain, reducing its effective weight. So when CSF provides buoyancy to the brain, making it float in the skull and thereby reducing its effective weight. This buoyancy helps protect the brain from any kind of physical activity or damage or degradation by acting as a cushion, and also supports its position within the skull, preventing it from pressing against the skull walls. So this we have to highlight, or we have to know the role of CSF, which has more mechanical function rather than any kind of hormonal function. So it protects against any kind of mechanical injury. We know that CSF surrounds the brain and spinal cord, and it provides mechanical protection by acting as a shock absorber, and it reduces the brain's actual weight through buoyancy, and it does not we have discussed that it is not involved in any kind of hormonal regulation. Let's talk about nutrient delivery. Second function. So transport nutrients to the neural tissues. So it plays a crucial role in sustaining the correct balance of chemicals, which are very important for normal functioning of neurons. So this ensures that neurons can effectively transmit signals and perform their roles in the nervous system. It carries glucose and proteins to the neural tissues. So it refers to the function of the blood in delivering essential nutrients like glucose and proteins to the brain and other nervous system tissues, which are mainly active and require a constant supply of energy and building blocks for the for proper functioning. So, talking about CSF, it carries glucose and proteins to the neural tissues. Let's talk about waste removal. So it removes waste products from the brain and spinal cord. It helps clear metabolic waste. Okay. So one of the main function of cerebrospinal fluid is the waste removal, specifically the process of clearing metabolic waste from the brain and the spinal cord. So it focuses on the role of or we can say cerebrospinal fluid in maintaining the health of the CNS by eliminating any kind of harmful substances. So it highlights that cerebrospinal fluid helps eliminate waste products and supports the lymphatic system, which is important or responsible for cleansing the brain. So this function is distinct from other potential roles of cerebrospinal fluid, such as cushioning the brain or maintaining intracranial cranial pressure. So the fluid involved in clearing metabolic waste, which is a key part of its function. One of the key function we can say. Additional functions, let's talk about it. So it helps maintain intercranial pressure. It acts as a medium for chemical signaling. So we have also already discussed that it has a huge role in waste removal, but along with it acts as a medium for chemical signaling. It provides immune protection. So we have also seen some additional functions. So this is question number 10. And the question is, which of the following is not a part of the hindbrain? So we have given 4 options and we have to opt the correct one. So here option number C is correct, which is hypothalamus. It is not part of the hindbrain. You can see the structure, we can see location of hypothalamus in this picture. So hypothalamus consists of 3 parts. First, we have pons. It acts as a relay station between the cerebellum and cerebrum, helping to pass messages back and forth between these brain parts, which is important for coordinating movement and maintaining balance. Cerebellum, on the other hand, is a part of the brain that helps you stay balanced and keep your body posture right. Like when you walk or stand without falling, it works by receiving signals from your muscles and other parts of the brain and then sending back messages to control your movement smoothly and keep you upright. So this is important for everyday activities. Medulla oblongata. It is a part of the brainstem that controls important involuntary functions like breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure, which we don't think about but are essential for survival. So it acts as a control center for these automated processes, ensuring that our brain functions smoothly even when we are not actively thinking about them. Then hypothalamus, we have also already discussed that it is a small but a very important part of the brain located in the forebrain, not the hindbrain. So it plays a key role in controlling many basic bodily functions such as body temperature, hunger, thirst, sleep. So it helps regulate the release of hormones from the pituitary gland, which is often called as the master gland of the body. So this is question number 11. And the question is myelin sheath is formed by. So we have given 4 options. Let's see the correct one. So option number A is correct, which is Schwann cells in the PNS and oligodendrocytes in CNS. We have also discussed this in our earlier questions. So in the PNS, or we can say peripheral nervous system, myelin sheath in the PNS is formed by the Schwann cells, which wrap around axons to insulate them and speed up nerve signal transmission. In contrast to CNS, In contrast to PNS, in the CNS, myelin sheath is formed by oligodendrocytes. This difference is very important in cell types, which highlights how the CNS and PNS have distinct, or we can say different mechanisms for supporting nerve function. So, each Schwann cell myelinates a single axon segment. So in PNS, we know that myelin is formed by the Schwann cells which wrap around axons to create an insulating sheath, which helps in fast nerve signal transmission. Now each Schwann cell covers a single segment of an axon, which ensures efficient and protective nerve impulse conduction. Now the process of myelination involves Schwann cells wrapping their membrane around the axon multiple times to form a thick insulating layer, which are called as myelin sheath, which helps in faster and more efficient nerve signal transmission. The nodes of Ranvier we have discussed in the first question also. These are the small gaps between the adjacent Schwann cells that line the axon. So these gaps allow for rapid transmission of electrical impulses along the axon by enabling the action potential to jump from one node to the next, a process collectively called as saltatory conduction. So this structure is very important for efficient nerve signal propagation in myelinated neurons. So you can see the structure of Schwann cells in PNS and oligodendrocytes in CNS in this picture. Let's talk about what happens in CNS. So we have discussed that myelin. What are myelin? This is protective and insulating sheath that surrounds nerve fibers, and it is formed by a type of glial cell which are called as oligodendrocytes. These cells, they produce the myelin material which helps to speed up the transmission of electrical impulse along neurons by providing an efficient pathway for nerve impulses. So a single oligodendrocyte is capable of myelinating multiple distinct segments of axons. So this means that the oligodendrocytes can wrap its myelin sheath around several different parts of an axon, providing insulation and support to enhance the speed and efficiency of nerve signal transmission. So this ability allows for efficient myelination across different regions of the nervous system, contributing to the overall function of the neural communication. So it's similar to how myelin sheaths are formed by the Schwann cells around axons in the PNS. Oligodendrocytes in the CNS also wrap their processes around axons to form myelin sheath, which provide insulation and speed up the nerve impulses transmission. But each oligodendrocyte can myelinate multiple axons, unlike Schwann cells, which myelinate only one. So nodes of Ranvier, we have discussed that these are the small gaps on the myelin sheath of nerve fiber where the axon is not covered by the myelin. And these nodes allow the electrical signal or action potential to jump quickly from one node to the next, making nerve signal transmission faster and more efficient. So this process is called as saltatory conduction. So this is question number 12, and in this question we have to opt the incorrect one. And the question is about synaptic transmission. Let's see the answer. So option number D is incorrect, and the option is action potential always moves from postsynaptic to presynaptic neuron. Let's see the answer why. So option D is correct. Option D is incorrect because action potentials travel unidirectionally from presynaptic neuron, which releases neurotransmitters, to the postsynaptic neuron, which receives the signal. So this directional movement ensures proper communication within the nervous system as the presynaptic neuron initiates the signal and the postsynaptic neuron responds to it. So the correct process of synaptic transmission, let's see. So in this picture you can see synaptic transmission, like how it happens. So when an action potential reaches this presynaptic terminal, it triggers the opening of voltage gated channels, allowing calcium ions to flow into the neuron. So this influx of calcium causes synaptic vesicles containing neurotransmitters to fuse with the presynaptic membranes, releasing the neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft, and these neurotransmitters then can bind to the receptors on the postsynaptic neuron, initiating a response and allowing nerve signals to be transmitted from one neuron to another. So when a voltage gated calcium channels open, they allow calcium ions or Ca2 plus to flow into the cell, which is crucial step in many cellular processes, especially in neurons and muscle cells. So this influx of calcium triggers various responses like the nerve impulse transmission and muscle contraction and the release of neurotransmitters. So this process is often explained as a part of how cells communicate and respond to electrical signals, highlighting the role of calcium as a key messenger in the cellular signaling. So when a nerve impulse reaches the presynaptic terminal, what happens? Calcium ions flow into the neuron through special channels, and this influx of calcium ions triggers the release of neurotransmitters from synaptic vesicles into the synaptic cleft, which allows the signal to pass from one neuron to another. So this process is essential for communication in the nervous system. So when a nerve impulse reaches the end of the neuron, synaptic vesicles inside the neuron fuses with the cell membrane, which releases neurotransmitters into the synaptic cleft. And this process allows the signal to pass from one neuron to another or to the muscle cell, enabling communication in the nervous system. So neurotransmitters, we have already discussed that these are the chemical messengers released by the nerve cell into the synaptic cleft, which is the small gap between two neurons. So they help transmit signals from one neuron to another by binding to receptors on the next neuron, which allow the nerve impulse to continue along the pathway. So this process is very important for communication in the nervous system, and it is a key part of how the brain and body function together. So neurotransmitters, they bind to specific receptors on the membrane of the next nerve cell, which are called as postsynaptic membrane, which helps in passing the nerve signal from one cell to the another. So after that, postsynaptic neuron response. It means that the signal from the presynaptic neuron has successfully triggered a reaction in the next one. So this is question number 13, and the question is, a person unable to maintain balance while walking likely has a damage to. Let's see the correct answer and discuss it. So we have given that B option is correct. So a person who is unable to maintain balance while walking likely has a damage to cerebellum. Let's see the function of cerebellum. You can see the structure in this picture. So it coordinates voluntary movement. It refers to the role of cerebellum in the brain, which is mainly responsible for coordinating smooth, precise, and voluntary movements of the body. So it prevents it basically helps in maintaining balance and posture at it, and it also ensures the movements are carried out accurately and efficiently. So it maintains balance and posture. So if a person cannot maintain balance while walking, it is likely due to damage in the cerebellum. That is the part of the brain that is mainly responsible for coordinating voluntary movements and keeping the body stable. So without proper cerebellum function, a person may stumble or lose their balance. So this part of the brain also helps coordinate voluntary movements and control muscle tone, making it essential for smooth and accurate physical touch. So cerebellum and motor cortex works with the muscle cells to refine motor skills through practice and repetition, which is important for learning new movements and enhancing coordination. So here, helps in motor learning refers to how certain activities or practices such as physical exercise, sports, or repetitive movements aid in improving the brain's ability to control and coordinate body movements. Fine-tunes movement precision and timing. It refers to how the nervous system, particularly the cerebellum, helps in making movements smooth, accurate, and well-timed by coordinating muscle actions and adjusting based on sensory feedback. So this is question number 14, and the question is, if sympathetic nerves to the heart rate are stimulated, then what will happen? So we have given 4 options, and let's see the correct one. So if sympathetic nerves to the heart are stimulated, heart rate will increase. Option number B here is correct. Let's see why. So when sympathetic nerves to the heart are stimulated, what will happen? It will lead to release of neurotransmitter. What will happen in here? The sympathetic nerve endings releases a chemical. We know that it is non-epinephrine, which is also called as non-adrenaline. It acts as a messenger to trigger responses in the body, such as increasing heart rate and preparing the body for flight and fight reaction. So this happens when the body senses a threat or stress, and the sympathetic nervous system helps the body react quickly by releasing this hormone into the bloodstream. So when sympathetic nerves so this will ensure, or we can say this is a part of flight or fight response. So this causes the heart rate to increase. Therefore, our option B is correct. Let's talk about effects on the heart. So the chronotropic effect refers to the ability of the heart to increase its rate, which is mainly controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. So when the body needs more oxygen, such as during exercise, the heart beats faster to pump more blood and deliver oxygen to the muscles, which help the body meet its increased demand. So this effect is important for maintaining adequate flow and supporting physical activity. The inotropic effect, it refers to the ability of certain substances like hormones or drugs to increase the force of contraction of heart muscle, making it pump more efficiently. So this happens by strengthening the contraction of cardiac muscle cells, which helps the heart pump more blood with each beat, improving overall cardiac output. So this effect is important in conditions where the heart needs to work harder, such as during exercise or in the heart failure. So, dromotropic effect, it refers to the ability of certain drugs to increase the speed at which electrical impulses travel through the heart, thereby improving the heart's conduction. So this effect helps the heart beat more efficiently, ensuring that the atria and ventricles contract in coordinated manner, which is very important for effective pumping of blood throughout the body. It will enhance cardiac muscle excitability. It refers to an increased ability of the heart muscle cells to generate and transmit electrical impulses, which is very important for proper heart function. So this concept is often linked to the role of ions like sodium and potassium and calcium in the action potential of cardiac muscle cells. These ions, we know that they move across the cell membrane through ion channels, leading to depolarization and repolarization, which drive the heartbeat. So enhanced excitability can occur due to factors like increased sodium influx or reduced potassium influx, which affects the heart's rhythm and potentially leading to conditions like arrhythmias. Okay. So let's talk about the whole mechanism. We know that norepinephrine, it is a hormone and a neurotransmitter which binds to beta 1 adrenergic receptor which are found mainly in the heart. So when it binds to these receptors, it activates the heart muscle, increasing the heart rate and force of each heartbeat, which helps the blood pump more blood, especially during stress or exercise. So this is a part of body's flight and fight response, helping to supply more oxygen and nutrients to the body's tissue. So when the sympathetic nerves to the heart are stimulated, the norepinephrine is released and binds to the beta 1 adrenergic receptors on the heart cells, which triggers an increase in heart rate and force of contraction by activating adrenaline cycles, leading to higher levels of cycling AMP, or we can say CAMP, inside the cells. So this binding activates an enzyme. We have also discussed adrenaline cyclase, which lead to the production of more cyclic AMP, or we can say CAMP, inside the cells. So increased CAMP levels enhances the activity of proteins involved in the heart function, such as those that increases the force and rate of heartbeats, thereby increasing cardiac output. So this rise in CAMP levels causes more calcium ions to enter the heart muscle cells, which strengthens the contraction of the heart muscle, making the heartbeat more forceful and faster. So this is a part of body's flight and fight response, which helps the blood pump more and more blood during stress or exercise. So this whole process we just discussed, leading to activation of adrenaline cycles, which further leads to increase in the CAMP level in the blood, which in turn enhances calcium influx. So this ultimately accelerates depolarization of the SA node, contributing to an increased heart rate. So it ultimately increases heart rate. So it outlines the sequence of events starting with non-epinephrine binding to the beta adrenergic receptors on cardiac cells, and this binding activates adrenaline cyclase, which increases the production of cyclic AMP, and the rise in cyclic AMP leads to greater calcium influx into the cardiac cells, which accelerates the depolarization of the sinoatrial node, or we can say SA node, and this results in faster heart rate. So the process highlights the whole intracellular signaling pathways in modulating cardiac function. Let's see some additional effects. So it will increase cardiac output. It will enhance blood flow to vital organs. It will improve oxygen delivery to the tissues. So when the whole process causes the SA node to depolarize faster, which in turn speed up the heart rate. So as a result, what will happen? The heart pumps more and more blood, which will increase eventually, which will increase cardiac output, and it will improve blood flow to the vital organs and delivering more and more oxygen to the tissues. So we will end up our session here. I hope this lesson was useful. Thank you so much for listening.